Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Yunxiao coughed a few times and said, "Don't be unconvinced. Some things are innate and cannot be changed later on. Do you think that others can't see me in the void? It's no use. Even though I've been keeping a low profile, no matter where I go, I'm like a firefly in the dark, bright and dazzling. No matter how low profile you are, you will be discovered." He revealed a deep melancholy expression, as if he was having a headache over this. Everyone in the Hall of Holy Fire looked at him coldly, proudly touching their hair from the front and back. Yi Fan said with a bitter face, "Young Master Yun, let's get back to the topic. Do you really not know that young man?" Qing Luo, who was eavesdropping, also put away her mirror and pricked up her ears, staring at Yunxiao in the image. Yunxiao said indifferently, "The heavenly martial realm is so big, there are countless strange people and strange things in it. That young man could be an old man who is hundreds or even thousands of years old. As long as he doesn't affect us, we don't need to care too much." Although this answer did not satisfy everyone, it was reasonable. Qing Luo didn't have much suspicion, but the expression on her face grew even more solemn. Soon, Shenli brought some of the materials on the list to Yunxiao, and everyone began to meditate in their rooms. Yunxiao swallowed all the materials without any difference, and kept accumulating primordial qi to break through the bottleneck of the 2 stars martial grandmaster. He did not waste the high-grade primordial stones around him. Ignoring the presence of others, he punched out and shattered all the primordial stones. A massive amount of primordial qi spread throughout the room, and he could not even see his fingers. The people of the Temple of Holy Fire were all shocked by his exaggerated actions, and they all cried out in pain that it was a waste. When they cultivated, they used them carefully one piece at a time. Although the Temple of Holy Fire used to be extremely powerful, after so many years, their savings had long been exhausted, and they usually lived frugally. They had never seen Yunxiao use primordial stones without blinking, and they were even high-grade ones. 1 qi of creation, absorb. All the pores on his body opened up as if he was breathing thousands of times at the same time. The massive amount of vital qi disappeared around him at a speed visible to the naked eye and was all absorbed into his body. His meridians expanded to their maximum in an instant, unable to withstand the vital qi anymore. At this moment, his body became as smooth as jade, shining with a faint light. After absorbing the excessive yuan qi in his meridians, his entire body looked thicker than usual by more than half. Everyone in the Temple of Holy Fire was stunned. They even forgot to absorb the dense vital qi that was about to liquefy. They all stared at it with wide eyes. Even a martial supreme would explode and die if he were to absorb such a massive amount of vital qi. Why was this kid completely fine? Yunxiao's body opened and closed as if he was breathing, and his primordial qi flowed through his meridians like rivers and seas, breaking through the barrier. Gulp. Fengzhu gulped as he looked at the yuan qi that was getting thinner and thinner. The amount of yuan qi that the kid had just absorbed was enough for him to break through a level. Qi Guang was also shocked. After absorbing so much vital qi, if he's not dead, he should have advanced, right? Could it be that his comprehension of martial essence isn't enough, and he's stuck? It should be, Tranche said in shock. He has just broken through to the 2 stars martial grandmaster level, and it will take him a long time to do so. If he forcibly breaks through to the 3 stars now, I'm afraid he will suffer a backlash. But I don't understand, where did the yuan qi that was absorbed go? Just a little bit more. Yunxiao's sudden opening of his eyes startled everyone. His eyes flickered like stars as he said, "I don't have enough yuan qi, just a little bit more." What? You still don't have enough yuan qi? All of them were dumbfounded and didn't know what to do. The ring in Yunxiao's hand flickered, and the storage bag Qing Luo had given him just now appeared in his hand. It contained 10 million mid-grade primordial stones, and he smashed them with one palm without hesitation. The vital qi spread out like the sea and washed over his body. The 1 qi of creation technique was activated, and vital qi was directly injected into his body. His body expanded once again, and his entire body was bulging as if he was about to explode. Yunxiao gave a loud cry as he brought his left hand to his dantian and raised his right hand slightly, then performed an incantation gesture. Under the two incantation gestures, the primordial qi around him began to circulate in a certain pattern, spinning around him. Upon closer inspection, it was actually moving in the opposite direction of the human body's great heavenly circuit. The people of the Temple of Holy Fire were dumbfounded. They had never heard of such a cultivation method. In Yunxiao's body, the surging rivers, lakes, and seas turned into trickles, gathering bit by bit and constantly washing away the bottleneck. Soon, he stepped up a brand new step and advanced to a 3 stars martial grandmaster. Yunxiao opened his eyes slightly with a smile. He changed his hand seals, and the spiritual qi around him turned into a stream that entered his body, nourishing his limbs and bones. Finally, it entered his dantian. The whole process lasted for 6 to 6 hours, and the people of the Temple of Holy Fire had been watching with their eyes and mouths wide open for 6 to 6 hours. Why aren't you guys cultivating? There are so many free primordial stones here, don't waste them. Yunxiao stood up and stretched his body, but he did not show any joy from advancing. In his opinion, these were all insignificant matters. The real headache was where he would find such an exaggerated amount of yuan qi for his future cultivation. At this moment, there were no more primordial stones left in the room. The high-grade primordial stones that were placed around him had all been destroyed by him. He had absorbed all of them. Gulp, gulp, gulp. Yifan swallowed 3 mouthfuls of saliva and said with difficulty, "Young Master Yun, you absorbed all that vital qi?" Everyone in the Hall of Holy Fire suddenly recalled what he had said when he was bargaining with Qing Luo. Those heavenly treasures were not enough for him to break through to 1 star. So it was true. "I'm a little special," Yunxiao said with a wry smile. "I'm in a special situation." He suddenly thought of the martial technique that Fengzhu, Qiguang, and Xianbing used when they fought. Every move was integrated with the rules of heaven and earth. Martial sovereigns could condense the rules, and their moves contained the power of heaven and earth. However, martial honorables could only comprehend the heaven and earth, and could not perform the ultimate move of heaven's power. How did Yi Nantian do it? He couldn't help but feel a little itchy in his heart. He grinned and said, "My cousin has taught me quite a few powerful moves. Why don't we have a friendly match and exchange some ideas so that we can improve together?" The people of the Temple of Holy Fire were all moved. If Li Huaqi had taught him the cultivation methods and moves, they would have been extraordinary, and they all looked eager. Yi Fan was also happy. "Let's forget about sparring. Let's discuss it." The vitality stones in the room were all gone, and everyone was no longer in the mood to cultivate. Instead, they began to discuss cultivation and martial skills. Their inheritances were the peerless martial sovereign Yi Nantian and the peerless martial sovereign Gu Feiyang. The 2 top masters had extremely strong comprehension in various fields and had almost reached the pinnacle of martial arts. They were only 1 step away from the 10 Directions Divine Realm. They benefited a lot from this discussion. In particular, the people of the Hall of Holy Fire were all shocked and horrified. Yunxiao's eloquence and understanding of many problems were far beyond their imagination. Many of the various insights and moves that Yi Nantian had left behind could be easily solved by Yunxiao after he listened to them. He explained them in the simplest way, making everyone understand them better. While everyone in the Hall of Holy Fire benefited greatly from this, they also felt dejected. He had always considered himself to be the descendant of a martial emperor and thought that his cultivation and martial techniques were unparalleled. He didn't expect that even martial Emperor Tianqin's martial ancestor-level cousin would be inferior to him. This conversation made all the people of the Temple of Holy Fire dejected and disheartened. In the end, they just sat there in a daze, their eyes blank. Their plans of hegemony seemed to have instantly turned into smoke. Their biggest reliance was the martial emperor's descendant, who had peerless cultivation techniques and the Yin Qi, so that they could find Noah's ship one day. Now that Noah's ship was ethereal and hopeless, and the so-called peerless cultivation technique was nothing more than this was a huge blow to their confidence. And the one who gained the most from this exchange was undoubtedly Yun Xiao. He was already at the peak of the martial supreme realm, and now he had learned a lot from Yi Nantian. With the two together, he seemed to see a broader path. I must read Yi Nantian's letter. He finally understood the saint skill. It was a basic skill created by Yi Nantian. It could trigger the power of the heaven and earth by following the power of nature. It could be integrated into every move and technique, allowing warriors below the martial supreme realm to display this rule force. Although it was very tricky and clumsy, it was already a huge breakthrough. This was undoubtedly a very shocking thing. Other than the absolute advantage in cultivation base, the most powerful thing about a Nine Heavens martial sovereign was his Nine Heavens Emperor Qi and rule force. A martial supreme's domain had already touched the edge of the rules, but it was only an imitation and borrowing. Martial sovereigns, on the other hand, were different. Each of their moves contained the supreme law. In addition to the supreme Emperor Qi of the Nine Heavens, everyone below the martial sovereign realm was an ant. As Yun Xiao's mind raced, he kept practicing the basic martial techniques in his mind. His understanding was much deeper than that of the people from the Hall of Holy Fire, and he was constantly improving them. Soon, he fell into deep thought. All of a sudden, he raised his hand slightly, clasped two fingers together, and chuckled. Although it was an extremely simple action, it shocked everyone in the Temple of Holy Fire, and their eyes were filled with monstrous waves. Although Yun Xiao was just gently picking a flower and smiling, there was an indescribable harmony and nature between his two fingers, as if that was how it should be. The smile seemed to have existed since ancient times, never increasing, never decreasing, never growing, and never dying. The people of the Temple of Holy Fire were all stunned and petrified. In order to learn this move, all of them had gone through thousands of trials and tribulations, cultivating with great difficulty, before they could have some small success. And the other party had just had a long conversation, and he was already far above them. The shock on Feng Zhu's face was beyond words. He said with difficulty, "Sacred technique." Yun Xiao gently separated his two fingers, and the power of the natural order suddenly dissipated. He himself looked surprised. He had performed this flower-pinching finger countless times, but the feeling just now was only felt when he performed sword art and great wind cloud palm. It was the circulation of rule force. Yun Xiao fell into deep thought. The three sword moves and the wind cloud palm were created by gathering the rules of heaven and earth and his own martial will. However, these low-level martial skills were only based on the moves themselves and the warrior's understanding. Their power was limited. Yi Nantian could merge the rules into every martial skill. His understanding of martial arts was even further than Gu Feiyang. The people of the Temple of Holy Fire didn't know what to say. They were all petrified, and their hearts were full of bitterness. They thought they had gained a lot from it, but they didn't expect Yi Nantian to understand all of Yi Nantian's skills when he explained to them. The most terrifying thing was that he could perform it in an instant. He was beyond the description of a genius or a monster. Yun Xiao felt that he had gained a lot, and he was in a great mood. Looking at everyone's faces, he smiled and said, "Don't look at me like that. I was just lucky." Feng Zhu's face was uglier than a pig's liver. Is there such luck? They weren't being petty. After all, they had also gained a lot, and they could break through a lot in the future. They were depressed because of the other party's talent, which made them have the thought of not wanting to live anymore. At this moment, there was a commotion outside. It seemed that something had happened. Yun Xiao frowned. What's going on? This void seems to be even more chaotic than the outside. Everyone also came out of their rooms and ran to the deck of the warship to take a look. Dozens of people had already gathered, all of them staring ahead. Under the light of the Netherworld battleship's green protective shield, they could see white light bursting out from time to time in front of them. Moreover, a large number of various fragments shuttled back and forth in the chaotic space, crashing toward them. This kind of thing was very common, and it was easy for such a phenomenon to occur when the void was unstable. However, what shocked everyone was that a similarly huge Netherworld warship was drifting in the air in tatters. It was being manipulated by various forces and was rapidly rushing in their direction. Qing Luo stood at the forefront of the ship. Her face was as gloomy as water, and she exuded a cold aura. Shen Li's pupils suddenly contracted, and she cried out in horror, "Lady Qing Luo, this battleship is Baiyan." As the broken Netherworld battleship rushed in, the huge symbol on it also came into view. There were still bodies floating everywhere in the battleship. They had all died not long ago. There was not a single complete body, all broken. Yunxiao's pupils constricted as well, and his face turned solemn. He had also recognized the symbol of this warship. Qing Luo said in an emotionless tone, "That's right, it's the Mando Merchant Group's warship. And according to the intelligence, the one leading the Mando Merchant Association's team this time should be Yi Qing. Their organizing ability is not the slightest bit weaker than ours." Her words were like frost, and a layer of ice appeared in everyone's hearts. Since the Mando Chamber of Commerce could be completely destroyed, they would be no exception. Shen Li's face was filled with horror. Who did this? The entire battleship was sent flying into the void. Even a martial sovereign can't do that, right? The people of Tiani Chamber of Commerce were all silent, looking at the terrible bodies on the starships in the distance. Each of them felt sad for the death of their kind. If he had not been traveling stealthily in the void, but had been flying in the demon land, perhaps those broken corpses in front of him would have been his. "Lady Qing Luo, the warship in front is about to hit us. Please give the order. Should I shatter it, or should I step into the demon planes from the void?" A gray-clothed old woman stepped forward and asked. Qing Luo's face was filled with hesitation. She pondered and said, "The Mando Chamber of Commerce's battleship should have been destroyed in the demon planes, not far ahead. If we enter the demon planes now, I'm afraid we'll encounter those enemies. Let's use the Netherworld strike to destroy it." "Yes." The old woman accepted the order and left, a hint of relief flashing through her eyes. Everyone's heart sank as they looked at the unsightly corpses on the Mando Merchant Group's warship. She was really afraid that Qing Luo would order them to go to the demon planes. Yifan approached Yunxiao and said in a low voice, "They seem to be in cahoots with the people who killed the Flying Frost sect. They all used such cruel methods." Although his voice was soft, everyone present was an expert. Instantly, all eyes fell on him, bursting with cold light. Qing Luo instantly stood in front of him. She glared at him and said sternly, "Do you know who did it?" Yi Fan was shocked by her aura. He retreated several steps. The people of the Temple of Holy Fire hurried forward and protected him behind them. Yunxiao made a calm gesture and said, "I can't be sure, but the way these corpses died was extremely similar to the Flying Frost sect. Lady Qing Luo, you've seen those corpses before. If I'm not wrong, it should be the skeleton mercenaries. The Mando Chamber of Commerce should have been annihilated by the skeleton mercenaries in pursuit of Tang Jia." The skeleton mercenaries? All the experts of Tiani Chamber of Commerce looked at each other in disbelief. Although the skeleton mercenary group was powerful in the Light Song Woodland, they were just a group of bandits. It was still hard to believe that they could kill the experts of the Flying Frost sect and the Mando Chamber of Commerce. Qing Luo also had a look of disbelief on her face as she snorted, "How can a mercenary group have such great ability?" The Flying Frost sect was not a sect to be trifled with, and the Mando Chamber of Commerce was not something they could afford to offend. Let's not even talk about whether they have the strength. Do they dare to? Yunxiao sneered, "What if the force behind the skeleton mercenary group is the starry and lunar illusion? What if it's the starry and lunar illusion?" Qing Luo's expression changed drastically, and her face turned extremely unsightly in an instant. Her eyes shot into Yunxiao's body like sharp blades, as if she wanted to see through him and judge whether he was telling the truth or not. But soon, a look of disappointment flashed across her face. No matter how she tried to figure out a way, she could only see a vague fog in front of this young man. She was shocked, the place where the demon clan congregates. The illusionary realm of stars and moon? The demon race and humans rarely interacted, so why would they be in contact with the skeleton mercenaries? "Are you confident?" "Of course," Yunxiao said proudly. "Don't forget that I'm the leader of a newbie mercenary group. What information in the Gentle Song Forest would be clearer than mine?" "Is that so?" Qing Luo turned around and looked at Shenli. Yes, that's true. Shenli was shocked and quickly replied. She was very nervous. She did not understand how the skeleton mercenary group had anything to do with the demons, and she did not know whether Yunxiao had real evidence or was just talking nonsense. If it was the latter, she would be killed. Qing Luo's aura turned cold, and she said in a cold and angry voice, "Why didn't I see you report such an important piece of information?" Shenli replied hurriedly, "It's just a recent development. I'm not too sure. I think it's a little ridiculous, so I plan to get to the bottom of it before reporting it. Now that I've heard what the city lord has said, I'm sure of it." Her heart was filled with bitterness as she wailed, "Li Yunxiao, you can't kill me." Qing Luo's face was gloomy and uncertain. She felt that things were getting more and more complicated. Now, even the demon race was involved. The battleship's attacks were all ready, and it emitted a strong light. A huge green beam of light shot towards the Mando Merchant Group's battleship wreckage, illuminating the entire void. Boom, boom, boom. The huge Netherworld battleship was shattered by the attack. It exploded into countless pieces, flying in all directions. The body parts that were not destroyed by the bombardment also turned into dust in the air. The effect of the entire scene was extremely shocking, and everyone's hearts were unusually heavy. Due to the huge tremors caused by the explosion, the entire void became extremely unstable. The Netherworld battleship began to experience huge jolts as it shuttled back and forth, and its energy shield also became dim and dark. In the void in front of them, a huge vortex had appeared out of nowhere, and it began to suck in the residual energy in the surroundings. All kinds of spatial turbulence suddenly changed directions and sank into the vortex. The starship also felt a great pulling force, as if it was going to change its course. The people of the Empyrean One Pavilion looked at the huge black vortex in front of them in horror. They activated the main formation of the battleship to its maximum and tried their best to move forward in the original course. If one were to be sucked into this black vortex, only God knew where it would lead to. Suddenly, Lil Wu's voice rang out in Yunxiao's spiritual ocean. "I can sense little Qing's aura not far away. It's extremely powerful and seems to be fighting. Is this the ancient evergreen tree?" Yunxiao's pupils constricted. It seemed that someone had already found him and made a move. Apart from wanting to take a look at the structure of Noah's ship, his other main purpose in coming to Yao Yuan was to use the ancient evergreen tree to collect the immemorial astral winds from the outer realm. The tearing force is too strong. "Lady Qing Luo, let's escape into the demon land," Yunxiao suddenly said, his eyes gleaming. Under the black vortex, the Netherworld warship was getting slower and slower, as if it could no longer hold on. Everyone on the warship was extremely nervous. If they couldn't make it, they could only enter the demon's land. Otherwise, their life and death would be in the hands of heaven. Qing Luo stared coldly at the center of the vortex. Knowing that she couldn't pass, she gritted her teeth and said, "Enter the demon land." The order was quickly passed down, and the light on the warship suddenly became bright and sharp. This light seemed to isolate the darkness around it, making the warship as bright as day. The battleship began to drift erratically in the light, and it suddenly disappeared into the void, leaving behind only endless darkness. At the same time, a bright spot appeared in the sky above the demon plains. It suddenly became bigger and brighter, and the shadow of a battleship gradually appeared. The light only gradually disappeared when the huge battleship appeared. The Tianyi Chamber of Commerce, Yunxiao, and the others had returned to the sky above the demon land.